Sean, what do you think of the battle of the rhetoric between Ange and Amorim? What they're, both of them, what they've been saying in the lead up to the final about what it means to each club. Like, what do you feel? How much of an impact do you think that'll make come next week?
If I'm entirely honest, I'm not a massive fan of either of it. I don't really like the Amorim approach of like, yeah, it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. Nothing changes the league thing, because like that's like almost like paying lip service to what is actually a massive opportunity for both clubs, and his reputation is on the line. Like, let's be honest. I know he hasn't had as long as Ange has had, but he's had long enough to have delivered more than what he's done. So to sit there and sort of like make out like the league is the bread and butter and this is all just a kind of by the by, I think that's a little bit disrespectful to the magnitude of the moment, and also how much it really does mean for him, because there's a lot of noise out right now that if he loses that, then Mourinho might come back in for a late swan song. As far as Ange goes, I echo what Gavin's saying there about, say what you want about Ange, but he does have the words. He is a wordsmith, so you can imagine him going to invoke something, and you need to rely on that. And also, I think that it's worth pointing out that if these group of players do this and win it, then they will do what all of the legends in the last 20, 30 years, whatever, or most of them never achieved, right? Like Harry Kane never did this. Ledley King never did this, right? Jurgen Klinsmann never did this. All the guys, Luka Modric never did this as a Tottenham player. And so there is a moment here for these guys to etch their names in glory and to really put that, put the history to bed and become something that, as I say, some absolute superstars that have adorned that white shirt and a lot of their numbers haven't had a chance to do. And I trust Ange to find the right words in the right order to get that done. As far as like Ange's kind of press relationship of late, I'm not really impressed with the way that I said this on a tweet before. I said that like back in the early 2000s, Mourinho created some sort of like us versus them, us against the world narrative. But the us included the fans, the players, everybody in the club. It was the world was everybody else. And I felt like at times this season, from what I've heard from him, from his reactions to fans in the stadium, from the way that he reacts to the press, and even comments from James Maddison and Vicario, Decky, there's a little bit of like that same us versus the world mentality, but at times I feel like the us thing is just them, the players and the manager, and it doesn't really include everybody else. And I think at times I felt like the fans are part of the world side on that, and it annoys me. It also really annoys me when I hear him again, like, putting into the context of where we're at. I can get it to a degree, but I felt like at times he has spoken out of both sides of his mouth. When he says one thing, he's also opening him up to criticism about something else. Like when he said, the injuries aren't my fault, we don't train anymore. Shortly after, we put that back three into place against Everton, and we changed the system against Liverpool in the cup and all those things. I'm like, well, if you're not training, then why are we experimenting in real time? That you're opening yourself up to criticism if people are paying attention and inferring, from what you're saying. And then what I feel like there's a lot of excuses and justifications for mistakes. He took credit for Jed Spence when that was just embarrassing, right? He said, like, he created the best analogy I've ever heard from someone that's run out of excuses by using that stonecutter analogy, because for that's basically like an indefinite stay of leave, by saying that I could be here for 5 years still losing every game, and if you sack me, then we just weren't at the 101st blow yet. So like, it's a brilliant identification of a never-ending reprieve from criticism in his own mind. But then when you hear that he's kind of run out of excuses the other day after the Palace defeat, and the interviewer said, like, come on, 20 defeats now in one season is really bad. What are you going to say? And then he ran out of excuses. So now he just scoffed and laughed it off and said, like, if you can't see that what we're doing here, there's a massive difference between the league and the cup, then I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, go and write your headline. I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say those words for word, but like, that's the kind of gist. And I'm sort of thinking, well, okay, well, if I'm taking you on your word here, and I probably shouldn't, because you'll change your tune at some point next week or whatever. But what you're really saying then is that if in the future, if you're still the manager and we go deep in any competition, then we can't expect anything other than a loss from our league performances, because you don't have the ability to fight on multiple fronts. And that's terrifying. Also, what you're saying is that you don't have any faith in the rotation of your squad, a squad that you have built. right? Because he has gone through 25 or whatever it is player transitions over the last 18, 19 months. So again, I'm not a fan of his. Like I've seen through it. I used to fall in love with the words. Now I see through it and see what it really is. It's a transparent and very obvious ability that he's harnessed very well as a salesman to be able to distance himself from accountability. So to answer your question, I don't really vibe with either of the approaches of either manager. I'd rather there was someone that just was honest and said it how it is and say, look, this is really important for multiple reasons. Obviously, it's the biggest deal, but yeah, you're right. The league isn't in any way acceptable. The performances, I can't really.
He has said that. He has said that.
Yeah, but he's like. I've been a manager in like lots of big businesses. I've had salespeople before who, under my remit who are very like open and honest, but they're not. What they do, they're telling you what you want to hear, but then nothing changes. It's
yeah, but he's not going to come out saying I'm a bad manager. He's obviously going to try and give reasons why things have happened.
Yeah, but he's run out of reasons, and now he's just saying if you just go and write your headlines. I don't care. Like, well. The fans care, right? I was at that game. You were at that game, Ben, on Sunday. Jack from Irish Hotspur and his mum travelled over from Seattle. I bumped into like 10 Koreans who'd flown over for the day. And then to put that on, to have that effort, it's unacceptable, it's dismissive, and it's disrespectful to the people that don't have the luxury of earning millions of pounds a year and can treat all that stuff as a sunk cost. To a lot of people, that sort of effort when you're saving up to be able to, especially those that travel from, not especially because I don't care if you live in Barnet or you live in like Timbuktu, it doesn't matter. If you're contributing to the club, there's a level of expectation, and I think the manager owes the fans a little bit more than dismissive and cynical, like almost bordering on narcissistic, like indignancy to the press, right? We only get a few minutes a week to hear his thoughts, and the way he dismissed that to me is unacceptable.
Look, Sean, I do agree with you for the most part, but I mean, when you're sitting here a week away from the Europa League final, like kind of all this stuff don't really matter right now. All it matters is if he gets the team right for the final, if we want it more than Manchester United, which I think we will do, if definitely when you're looking at the two players coming into it. And then after the final, we can have these conversations. Is Ange the right man for us? But right now, I think it's just so important that, we just show Ange the most amount of support that we can do. And, all these kind of games, we've been suffering all season, seeing this Premier League form like getting worse and worse and worse progressively throughout the season. But it's none of it's going to matter, right? None of it's going to matter if we're sitting there in Bilbao Wednesday night celebrating that trophy.
100%. If we are, then great. If we're not, then, as I've said before, right, there's a massive difference between being the best manager Spurs have ever had or in the last 40 years and the most successful. You can be the most successful and be far away, like very far from the best. And I think he will go down as the worst manager we've ever had, but possibly also the most successful in the last two generations. And that to me is fine. I'm happy to park everything and celebrate, and I'll sing his name one last time on Wednesday or Thursday or Sunday after the game at Brighton at home. And I hope that we can part company as a successful endeavour. But what I've seen from him, and I hear what you're saying, none of it does matter, but you still have to act like you care, act like it's important. And as I say, it's only words. It doesn't take much effort to act like you give a shit. And he doesn't see, of late, it looks like he's a man who's run out of rope, and he's now moved away from, I've got an excuse for this or I've got a justification for that, to now it's just, you know what, do what you want, write what you want, us versus the world. And that world includes the fans, and that's problematic for me.
Before we carry on, we'll go on for a bit longer, but Brains has got to go because he's got to jump off. But big up, Brains. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers, Brains.
Yeah, I just want to say about Ange is that if I was him, he had a massive opportunity in these last few weeks, especially getting to the final, to kind of to basically say, I was brought in to do this, to do a job, get a trophy at this club. Mm-hmm. And obviously he can't come out and say, well, it looks like the Prem isn't going to be it, so forget that, and we're just going to not focus, just use that as kind of the bad tournament and try win the other. But that is what we all know, that's what the situation's become, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but now he's here. Now he's managed some really difficult games, shown that he's got this versatility to play different styles and see out hard games. Now he's in the final. He could, and he probably should in some ways be sitting there going, just have patience. This is what I was paid to do. This is why I'm here. I'm trying to change things. I need your support, and have that kind of conversation with the press and the fans. Like, look, you guys don't know everything. I can't tell you everything. We've got strategy, but just support us and we'll come good. And then when we got here, I think we'd all still be singing the names. But it's the jibs with the fans. It's the lifting the hand. It's the way that his kind of competitive Aussie spirit of like, I'm it. Like, you don't know, I'm the man. You know. So like, it's that personal internal stuff that is the tripping up. And maybe he isn't saying what I just said he should say because it isn't true. Maybe he didn't have those conversations. Maybe he wasn't brought in just to win a trophy. Maybe Levy gives him this whole thing, and it isn't just that, and that's just us projecting because that's what we want, you know. So I think there's ways that he could have done it. He's clearly not well. He's not press trained. He's not really, you know, his whole career's been this.
I thought you just finishing it. He's clearly not well.
Yeah, his whole career has kind of been like weird arguments with press, and then amazing relationships with that same press corps when he's the winner. Like he goes through this like arguments back and forth, like that one in Scotland initially when he was arguing with a guy about they didn't know who he was, and you know, and then next thing you know, they're sitting down and they're doing one-to-one conversations with him being this legendary manager. That's kind of what he does. But I would have thought like, well, so you know this happens. So why are you surprised when people are like judging and going, who's this guy? You know, like, you know this process. You've done it before. You've been in a team and they struggle in the first season or whatever, and then you come good. Like, why are you not confident in that? Why are you not behaving that way to the press going, I promise you it'll come good. We've got loads of problems. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to blame them, but I promise you it'll come good. Just stick by us. And I think if fans heard that message, we'd have been like, all right. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Lovely seeing you guys again. I just got to run off, but I'll speak to you all soon, and hopefully we play absolutely a nothingness team and throw another game on Friday, so that we don't any players.
Brains, just before you go, Paul O'Keefe has just said that Kulusevski is having pain-killing injections in his knee. Still a major doubt for the game, but he's not 100% ruled out yet.
Have you ever, Brains, as someone who's got a history of injuries, have you ever done that? A pain-killing injection in your knee?
Yeah, and it's not a good thing. Obviously, pain shuts down very parts of the muscle. So if you feel a pain somewhere, it's a signifier saying stop. You know, so pain shuts down muscles, and yeah, he shouldn't do it. Like it's for years, like epidural, you get the like pain steroids in your back. Small relief, doesn't solve anything. Spent most of his career with shots in for his sciatic nerve problem. Didn't make anything better. So yeah, inject him up and we'll throw him out there. Why not?
Big up, Brains. Thanks for coming on today, mate.
You guys said take care. Cheers.
Cheers, Brains. In terms of what you were saying, Shawnee, about the problems you have with what Ange says and all this kind of stuff. What he said was, I think after Palace, he said, if it's fair to say if we weren't in the Europa League final or in the Carabao Cup final, then the league results would have been different. Like, is that not just him basically, with all the problems that we've had this season, injuries and all this kind of stuff, and then managing these players on their return, because a lot of them have obviously been out for a long time, 3-4 months, and you've seen with Romero van der Ven, he's been managing them up until this point where now they're obviously playing 90 minutes in Europa League games, but before that, they were playing 60 minutes and whatever. He was easing them in 45 minutes, 60 minutes, like in Premier League games and Europa League games before. Now they're in a phase where they can play. Like, is he not just implying like he's had to manage this situation, right, up until the point where these players are now fully fit, and in that time he's had to make obviously tough calls because we're in this Europa League run, and obviously he's prioritized this Europa League run because that's obviously I think we can all agree that's obviously the best way we're going to get a trophy back in Europe, and the only way really right now. And isn't he saying if I was managing this situation without this Europa League run, then we would have much better results in the Premier League, because right now in the Premier League, that's kind of not the most important thing. Well, not the most important thing, but it's not the kind of that's like.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just think that there's obviously like he's invoking some ulterior timeline of reality where like, oh, just trust me, it would all have been great had we not had this distraction. We don't know that. And if anything, you can park your minds back to.
He didn't say it would have been great, but maybe he's saying we wouldn't be on 20 losses with the record, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'd hope not. Like, I'd hope not, right? Because it's the worst in our Premier League history. It's the worst since '91. And the team is nowhere near as bad as the teams that we had in the '90s or the early noughties, right? Nowhere near as bad. I think he's like I say, I think he's invoking like hypothetical timelines that we'll never know the difference, and just asking us to buy into that. And if you're gonna like just look back at last season, when the first 10 games really did paper over a horrendous last 28 games of the season, where he also promised us just wait until we get our first team back, and we didn't have any cup distractions in the second half of last season. It was the fewest games in Tottenham's Premier League career, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was.
And we still were absolutely shambolic at times, getting beaten by teams that are nowhere near as good as us on paper, that are just better organised. And he found the excuses back then. I hear what you're saying, mate. Like, of course it's not black and white. Of course it's not black and white. Nothing ever is. There's always a shade of grey. There's always context and considerations. And I absolutely empathise and sympathise with the plight of which he's had to endure with injuries. Not just this season, but last season as well. It was bad. But, every team does have injuries, and every other team finds ways to figure out a method to get it done. At the same time, I'd also say that for most teams, when they go from a period of playing no European football to then having to deal with European football, even Newcastle United struggled at their first attempt of doing that. So did Aston Villa 2 seasons ago. But those teams have matured to the point where they can now handle it and sort of be a threat on multiple fronts. Tottenham have the added complexity of also going deep in the Carabao Cup. So I'm not going to sit here and dismiss it as an irrelevant factor. I'm just saying that the argument that he's making, he's run out of legitimate excuses, and now he's having to ask people to imagine a timeline and trust him that it would have been different, when the only evidence we have of that was last season, and it didn't work out any different.
But if he's saying people point to in December, he was, when we weren't doing very well, we were losing lots of games, and he was saying, once we get our players back, it's going to be a different situation, and we'll be better. And then they're saying now, well, look at the league form since we got our players back, and it hasn't improved. But we're in a European final. Is that not signs of improvement since the players came back? Would that not be evidence of the team improving, given the fact we're in a European final?
Well, let me ask you this, right? Again, I'm not undermining it at all, because you can't help who you play. You can't help who you play. You can't help the draw. You can't help the fact that the rules were changed to limit the amount of drop downs of quality from the Champions League. But would you look at who we've played, and would you expect Bournemouth to have got past those same teams? Would you expect Crystal Palace to have got past those same teams?
Would you expect Lazio?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't watch Serie A enough, so I'm not.
Right, would you say Lazio are better than the teams you're mentioning? They're currently fourth or joint fourth in Serie A. They're not a bad team. That is a case to say they're better than those teams you're mentioning potentially.
Yeah, again, I'm not someone that I was never someone that said that Bodo. A lot of people in the Tottenham community before the Bodo game were saying they're no mugs. This game isn't over. We're 3-1 up. We've got to go their place. They've done damage on some massive teams, and then as soon as we beat them, there was a lot of goalposts moving, saying, "Well, it's only Bodo." I wasn't part of that crew, right? I said, "No, it's credit to the boys. We were organised, and we surprised Knutson." And he articulated as much. So I'm not taking anything away from the European performances. I think they've been resolute, they've been disciplined, they've been organised. But if we can do that in the Europa League, why can't we do it in the Premier League? And that, to me, there's a question mark around why it is that we go and do that disciplined effort in the Europa League, and then we turn up against Palace or West Ham or whatever else, and either don't care, or we park ourselves back into this kind of, archaic version of Ange ball that's somewhat adapted, and certainly adapted in the Europa League, but hasn't done so much in the Premier League. And then the outcomes are the same as they have been for the most part of the last 18 months. And to
That's
me,
fair, but if you did like a combined 11 between the team we played on Sunday and Palace, you probably take more Palace players.
well, that's just talking out of the Henry Wright school of thought, mate. Henry
Is
Wright
that-
thinks that he would
I'm
take
saying
half.
for the team on Sunday that we started, I'm saying.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
do a
well,
combined
yeah.
11 with the Palace team.
Yeah, but I also maybe on that basis, but you know, I would also say that we were completely outclassed on, like, we didn't have a sniff, and they could have won that game 6-0 on a different day. So it wasn't even a competition. And I don't think the gap. I'm not someone who thinks that this squad is as bad. A lot of people suggesting that this squad is horrendous. I think that over the last 2 years, from the Conte model, our first 11 was here and our squad was here. I think what's happened is it's more like that now. I think that our first 11 isn't quite as good with the absences of notable players like Harry Kane, etc. But the depth in the squad has closed the gap. And I don't look at the team on Sunday and think that Crystal Palace's starting 11 should walk past us at home like it was a training ground routine. And that's what it felt like. West Ham and Tottenham used to be a good derby match. On the week before, it was like one of the worst games of football I've ever seen. And I think you can make that same argument for many appearances. Many of the efforts that were put on display by this system, of which, like I said in the previous answer earlier, it's not like Ange has inherited this squad. Like, this squad is largely his now, right? For the most part, it's largely his. So he's created a team, and when he says things that you could infer to mean, like, when we go deep in a European competition, don't expect anything else other than a loss from a team that over the last 10 years have been, relegation fodder, or a slowly developing team under, previous incarnations under Roy Hodgson or whatever, but now under Oliver Glasner, they're doing bits. Like, I don't accept that that's a realistic outcome that we should come to be okay with as Tottenham Hotspur fans. It's an unacceptable level of accepting of horrendous performances by a team that he's put together in the name of, we've got bigger fish to fry. Like, that's not what football's about. And I think that if he's literally saying that, and I'm taking him on his word, then I really worry about the idea that if we do win the league, the Europa League, and he's given a stay of execution, then nothing will change next season. And if we were to dare to go deep or have any ambitions in any of the cups that we're in next year, then again the league would be a kind of afterthought, and that to me is not acceptable, because it's your bread and butter. I've always said that that your league is the best barometer of where you are relative to your week in, week out competition, and this season's proven to be a stark awakening of that reality.
I guess if I was Ange, which a lot of people accuse me of being, what I'd argue is, obviously there's clearly been a lot of missteps and mistakes made when it comes to how they've been handling the injury and playing attrition this season. And look, Ange has admitted that himself, this season, whether he said he went too hard at the beginning of the season or whatever it is, there's been a lot of mistakes and a lot of blame to be had in terms of, all these players, why they were getting injured, and that's had a big part to play in how the season's been derailed. And I think since the players come back, he's managing them in a different way, I think it's fair to say. And I correct me if I'm wrong, I think since the players have come back in, February, March time, I don't think of too many muscle injuries that we've had off the top of my head. We've had a few. Maddison got a knee injury. Bergval's got an ankle injury. Decky, I think, has just picked up a knee injury. But I don't think of too many muscle injuries that can be put down to, the way we play or whatever people put it down to beforehand, because we were running too much or whatever, we're going too hard. So if he's learning from those mistakes and we're managing the squad better, right, from that point of view, we get our place in that Europa League. The next season, the squad will be in a much better position to handle both competitions. Maybe there's some improvements to the squad and lessons learned from what we went through this season to handle more than one competition, compared to right now in the state of the squad with all the injuries that we've had throughout the season, and for long-term injuries as well. Right now, he's kind of had to kind of pick and choose how he plays his best team, rather than being able to play a more consistent 11s more often, or even maybe just make one or two changes rather than 8 or 9, which he's basically had to do to keep these players, manage these players through the whole season, this part of the season that he's had to do. And with the instilled belief, first of all, in the squad having won a competition and lessons learned from the injury crisis that we have gone through, then we'd be in a different position next season.
Yeah, but again, a lot of that is
one win. There's been
you're
one
hanging
win
your
in
hat
that
on
time.
lessons learned, mate. I don't know. Like, I think that's a massive. It's been 2 years. Right? I remember 18 months. No, sorry, maybe 5 months ago. We were losing. I think we lost to Ipswich. I think it was right. And he came out and said, "I don't want to focus on the game and the defeat in isolation. What's happening right now is far more important."
Lessons learned from injuries. That's what I was saying.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, look, injuries are always going to be a factor.
Not that many.
Well, I mean, Arsenal have had more injuries than Tottenham this year. Newcastle had more injuries last year. I think Bournemouth have had a lot of injuries as well. I just think it's always, yeah. Like, again, I said it in the previous answer. Like, I'm not in any way undermining that variable. I think it's real and relevant. I just don't think that he hasn't shown to me anywhere near enough gumption to think that things are going to like manifest into different realities next season. And I was of the mindset that I'm okay on a meritocracy basis. I'd rather the club didn't. I'd rather the club find a way to part companies in a world where we win. If he loses the final, he has to go. But if we win, then I think it's an open-ended debate, or whatever. And I've always said I'm okay on a meritocracy basis if the club were to make that decision. But over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've very much hard-lined move towards the even on a meritocracy basis, just the way that he conducts himself, the way that he excuses himself, and the way that the team in interviews and him and the kind of the approach that's been on offer and the insights that we can garner, I'm just not on board it anymore. I don't think that he's the right guy for this level of expectation. He might do a good job at a team that doesn't have to play twice a week, but for teams that do, you need managers that can find the time to do more than just rinse and repeat one version of football. And and I don't think he does. I think he hasn't got a plan B of his own version, let alone does he have time or seemingly any interest in really doing SWOT analysis of the opportunities and threats of other teams.
But is the recent Europa League games not evidence of that?
No, I don't think we have. Well, there's been an adaptation of the way we structure our own football, but I haven't ever seen any setup where we're looking to take advantages of the vulnerabilities of the other teams. And I think that other team managers have adaptability to pivot in game or over a period of games towards different.
We did do that against Bodo in the second leg. We did do that against Bodo. We completely, went into a game with the idea to nullify what they're strong at. That's what we did.
I just felt like we went there to hang on. I don't feel like we necessarily curtailed their threats. I mean, for what it's worth, I didn't think that they demonstrated any threats as well. I thought that they were really poor over the 2 games. And again, you can make the argument that we made them look poor, then that's a reasonable one to make. But I'm just, from what I've witnessed, and it's just my take, I just don't think that there's enough attention paid to the strengths of other teams and how do you curtail them. I think against Frankfurt, people make the argument that that was what happened with Romero against Ekitike, and I think that there's some merit to it. But also don't forget that who was the 10 who went off injured? It wasn't close. It was what's his name?
For who?
For Frankfurt in the away leg.
Götze,
yeah, Mario Götze, yeah. So I think that he was an absolute massive hit for them. When he went off injured, that changed the game fundamentally, and that sort of thing was luck. That wasn't by design, obviously. So I think he stays on the pitch. It's maybe a different outcome. Like I say, I'm not as blinded by the Ange outlights as others, but I don't want him at the club next season.
What was the point you made before? If he won the Europa League, he'd be the worst manager. What did you say? The worst manager to win it?
I think that there's a difference between being the best manager of all time, or in the last couple of 40 years, and the most successful. A lot of people are confusing that and saying, well, if he wins the league, he's the best manager at Tottenham for 40 years. Well, no, that's not the case. He might be the most successful, but he isn't the best. Clearly, he isn't the best. But you could make the argument that he's the worst based on the league form, because there's never been a system.
Well, if you take both, at the end of the season, if we have won that Europa League, and then you take both seasons as an overview, finishing 5th in your first and winning a major European trophy in the second, has any Tottenham manager done better than that in their first 2 seasons?
Done better or been more successful?
Done better than that. 5th and a major European trophy in your first 2 seasons.
You're taking out the bad things as well.
You're
leaving out 17th.
But this is what we're talking about.
Yeah,
we're
talking about 17th in there as well. Then.
Okay, and 17th.
So he's got a net average of about 10th in the league.
And a European trophy.
So he's
You would also have a major European trophy
Yeah, but his points per game or whatever is the lowest in Tottenham's history, right? And over the 2 years, and that I think, like I say, for me, I've never been someone that says top four isn't a trophy, even though it isn't a trophy. I said it in the previous answer. I think that the barometer of where you are as a football club is how you do in the league, and I think that if you're a fan of a football club, then in a season where you finish fourth and you might only get to the fifth or sixth round or whatever of a couple of cups, you're still going to be leaving your environment, having watched Tottenham play on a Saturday or a Wednesday or whatever, happy 75% of the time. This season, it almost feels like if we win it, there should be an asterisk on the cup because it's been a really horrendous season to endure for Tottenham fans for 75% of the games that we've had to watch.
So you think the clamour for trophies at this club has been overstated due to
I've always said, like, I think that trophies are, when people say what's the point of elite sports, it's trophies. I see what you're doing here, Sim. You're trying to turn the attention onto me rather than letting it be about you and your love of Ange. I hear you. And you're doing a good job.
Sean, don't worry. It does this to everyone.
Well, I've always said that whilst, like, to answer the question, what's the point of elite sports? Yeah, for sports players, it's to win a trophy, right? But you are not not an entirely irrelevant, but you are, for the most part, an irrelevant observer of other people's success or failure. You're just a participant in the support of it, and so you don't get a hand on the trophy. It doesn't go in your cabinet. And for me, I like to look at Tottenham. I like to watch football as a distraction from the stresses of your normal life, right? And so I'll tolerate this season once to get the monkey off our back for our trophy drought. But if I had to repeat this every season, it's not for me. Not for me.
No, I agree with that, but if I offered you fifth place right now, but we're out of that Europa League final, would you take it?
For this season, no, I wouldn't, based on where we were. But at the start of the season, if you said to me fifth place and Champions League qualification, or 17th place and a trophy, I said I'll tolerate it once. But if you're going to offer it to me for 2 years running, 3 years running, no, because it's been horrendous. The season's been horrendous.
Maybe this is a one-off then, though.
Yeah, but it won't be a one-off with Ange.
Maybe it will.
There's no chance Ange Postecoglou gets this team back into the top four next year. No chance. By merit in the Premier League. No, in my opinion, no chance. And therefore, that's why I land on regardless of the outcome, I would like to move on.
Well, I think it's absolutely spot on though what you say about best and most successful, because you look at the most successful managers in our Premier League history: Juande Ramos, George Graham. They're nowhere near the best managers that we've had at this football club in that time, are they? Nowhere near.
Exactly.
They didn't finish fifth, though.
What's that?
They didn't finish fifth.
Who cares about finishing fifth?
So all of a sudden it doesn't matter where you finish in the league now.
It matters if it's significant. We need to be finishing the top four.
Pochettino got to
fifth for this season would be significant because it would have been Champions League football. But
this season last season through the back door again, but last year
it was the same thing. It's not our fault that the European clubs didn't do well.
But would you tolerate this next season, Sim?
No.
Would you tolerate it? Okay, so then you've answered your own. Okay, perfect. That's what I need to know. Thank you. So you're Ange out as well.
I wouldn't tolerate this next season, no.
So you're Ange out as well. You just can't bring yourself to say.
Why does that mean I'm Ange out?
Because this is what will be. This is at best what will be replicated next year.
I disagree. I don't think it will be.
You think he's got the stones to be able to? If we win the cup, which is the only way in which he'll still be employed, you think he has the stones to be able to do better in the league where we're back up competing for European spots and also conduct himself on 3 other fronts?
Depending on what kind of summer we have, yeah, I do. I don't think we're going to be mired back in the relegation battle.
Okay, but when was the okay? So would you tolerate 12th in the league and a late cup run?
No, I think he can get us back challenging for Europe next season.
But you're saying that's predicated on the summer. Let me ask you this: when was the last summer transfer window that you were really happy?
I don't know, never probably.
So you genuinely believe
do you have in Tottenham getting the transfer window up?
Champions League football where we're going to have to play our strongest team, plus a league season where we're going to have to play our strongest team. Like, how is he supposed to manage that?
How's anyone?
Well, they have much better squads than us.
No, I'm talking about any manager. I'm talking about if that's what we're still talking about next season.
Other managers don't play such high intensity football,
and we haven't recently.
Recently, yeah.
But yeah, so maybe next season he won't.
And recently as well, we've won 1 game since March.
Yeah, because we're managing this squad with a lot of injuries. Next season, I don't think we're not going to play Romero and Van de Ven in the Premier League.
Well, Romero won't play at all.
Well, he won't play at all. But, yeah. But I'm just saying, we're not going to be resting. At the start of the season, it's not going to be our B team starting it from the season, is it? It's going to be, we'll be playing our first 11.
It's going to be our A team playing every single game and inevitably break down.
Well, maybe not, because he's clearly said that he's learned from that, or he's
I
acknowledged
can't give
that
him the
was
benefit
wrong.
of the doubt, Sim. Like, if it's
Maybe
taking
not, but that's what he said. So
he says a lot of things. He says a lot of things one week, and then he changes his tune the next week.
Yeah,
right? The
a lot
last
of managers
season,
do. Like we
I
always used to complain about Jose and Conte contradicting themselves all the time. It was always had problems with it.
But there's some massive differences between a manager that literally last season said the reason why we're not doing so well is because we're not playing enough games, and this season is because we're playing too many. Like, it's just
we're playing too many amidst an injury crisis. Yeah.
It's wildly inconsistent, and it's wildly looks like a guy whose back's against the wall who'll find any words to justify it. I personally think that if you're saying that the reason why you're still on the train is because you're harboring some hope that he's learned from his mistakes. Sorry, 2 years. You're not afforded 2 years. No one, the tenure of a Premier League manager is like 16 months, right? So he's long past that. And he's now still saying, I'm learning from my mistakes. Sorry, bro. You don't get that much rope anymore. No one does. No one would do. If it was, I don't know. I've got no idea why Daniel Levy has the track record he has of the impatience that he has shown to everybody else. And yet he gave this guy as long as he's had.
So, but Sean, if we win that trophy in Bilbao, would it be justified him staying? Like, if it was him having kept him, I'm saying. No, not saying keeping him for next season, but the decision to keep him on until the end of the season, is that not justified if we win the trophy?
If trophies your like be all and end all, which it hasn't been for Daniel Levy, and let's be honest, Daniel Levy cares about money and money only more than anything, or at least more than anything else. And yet the money we're going to make from winning the trophy, it's only going to be slightly compensated for by the Champions League qualification prize money. But ultimately, we're sacrificing £32 million. There's still £12 million to play for in the Premier League in merit awards, and yet we're treating it like they're just an irrelevant like headache. Like, Daniel Levy must be looking at that going...
Because for fans, I tell you why, because as fans, we've been banging on about how Levy has been, looking to maximise profits and all these kind of things. And now we've got a cup final up for grabs, and all of a sudden people are saying, oh, but there's $3 million per Premier League place. Don't we want the money? It's like, no, we want the trophy.
I'm not talking from the fans' perspective. And Ange Postecoglou has made absolutely every demonstration that he doesn't care about the fans' perspective. So, like, he's not coming out from that perspective. Daniel Levy's never cared about the fans' perspective. He cares about the money. So my argument is more around why has Daniel Levy stood by him? And you're saying, well, it will be justified. And maybe it will. But at the same time, I would argue that if he'd made the decision to make a change earlier, not that I was calling for it, so I don't want to be considered a flip-flop. I was willing to give the guy the cups, and that's why I've stood by it. But right now I'm saying moving forward, I don't think that he's the right guy. I think I've seen enough now for my patience to have run thin with his justifications. But the argument that we wouldn't, like, had they made a decision to change manager earlier, you can't therefore assume that we wouldn't also be in the same position if there was a different manager in place right now.
I'm saying, but look at Man United change managers. Any guarantee the league form would have improved?
Yeah, and it hasn't. So yeah, I hear you on that.
You know what I mean? So I think if we do win that trophy, the decision to have given him till the end of the season would have been vindicated, in my opinion, because he won the trophy. He won that Europa League.
From a success perspective, but from the like financial perspective, which is what Daniel Levy cares about, I think that's questionable.
I mean, depending on when you're saying we should have sacked him or not, depending on what point in time you're talking about. Like if you're saying in December he should have been sacked, then
no, I'm not saying he should have been. I'm just saying that he could have been. There was enough uproar among the fan base. If the fan base were like beacons of information that the club actually listened to, and there was enough like intolerance of Ange back then. I wasn't part of it. I was willing to let it play out. So I don't want to be like a Johnny come lately to that train, but I'm just saying that there was enough evidence. But the fans are not listened to. The fans are not a beacon that's taken on board by the people at the club. So look, we don't know, right? We're talking about hypotheticals of what might have happened if the other decisions have been made. I'm just looking forward. We are where we are. I really hope that he gets it. Hope he gets it right, and that we get the job done on Wednesday. But for me, regardless of what happens on Wednesday, I'd like to see another man at the helm.